This tutorial will cover update and annual assessments. Each assessment for a program enrollment is what we call a point-in-time assessment. A point-in-time assessment is a snapshot of the client's situation at the time the data is collected. An entry assessment is a snapshot of the client's situation at the time that client enrolls into the program. We want to preserve that information. If a client's situation changes, we do not want to change the data we collected at entry to reflect the client's new situation. If the client's situation changes, we will want to perform an update assessment as needed. For example, let's pretend that our client did not have income when they enrolled in our program. Our entry assessment would reflect that the client did not have income at the time of entering the program. However, you being the great case managers that you are, you have been able to help your client gain income. You would not want to change the information recorded at entry. Instead, you would want to perform what's called an update assessment to reflect the client now has income. Let's review how to perform an update or an annual assessment. Be sure you are on your client dashboard. Your client dashboard is found in the client workspace. All assessments are attached to the client's record. The client must have an open enrollment for you to perform an update or annual assessment. In the example here, my test client, first name is March, last name is Test. It's very important that you are aware which client record that you are on. You can see the client's name here in the top left corner. Simply scroll down to the section of the dashboard titled your client's name and enrollment. Underneath, there will be an active or open enrollment. Simply click on what's called the action arrow for the open enrollment for which you want to perform the update or annual assessment for. In doing so, you have a menu list. The very last option is update/annual assessment. Let's click there. A workflow will open for you. Remember all the do's and don'ts about a workflow. Workflows are very sensitive, so you do not want to click outside of your workflow. You don't want to click on the back arrow in your internet browser. You don't want to pause or cancel your workflow. You don't want to navigate away or out. You want to complete your workflow from beginning to end so that you don't result with an assessment that has missing information. Let's scroll down a little. Notice that the program enrollment has already been selected for me. Below, I see my household members. Notice that each person is selected. There's a check mark to the left of each person for which I am about to perform an assessment for. That's by default. This just simply means that each person will be part of your workflow for either the update or annual assessment. There are no additional changes that should be made here. If you are a permanent supportive housing program and you wanted to record the housing move-in date, that can be done here at this time. I haven't made any changes, so let's click No Changes and proceed to the next page. From the Type of Assessment screen, this is where you will select either to perform a during program enrollment. This is what we call an update assessment, which means your client has had a change in their situation, or an annual assessment. March Test, which is my example client here, has not been enrolled in the program for a year, so I cannot perform an annual assessment for our client. Let's take some time to discuss the difference between a during program enrollment and an annual assessment. A during program enrollment is an update assessment. This means that the client has had a change in income, a change in non-cash benefits, a change in disabilities, or a change in health insurance. An annual assessment is required to be recorded for every person in the household within 30 days of the head of household's project start date. This means that you should track when an annual assessment is needed for individuals enrolled in your program. An annual assessment can be recorded in the system no earlier than 30 days before the head of household's project start date and no later than 30 days after the head of household's project start date. A during program enrollment, or what we call an update assessment, cannot be done in the place of an annual assessment. If annual assessments are not completed, there will be missing data on the reports. Let's click on During Program Enrollment. Notice the progress bar on the left side of my screen, and notice that I'm on the Universal Data Assessment screen. The assessment date defaults to today's date. All I have to do is scroll down to client location, and this pre-populates for me. The very first question is health insurance. If my client has had a change in health insurance from the last time an assessment was performed for my client, all I have to do is answer the question, covered by health insurance, yes or no. Let's say yes. Because I've said yes, my client has health insurance, I have to say yes to each type of health insurance that my client is receiving. That can be one type of health insurance or it can be multiple. Reason for no coverage is only required for HOPWell programs. Please note that if yes to other public health insurance is selected, you will be prompted to type exactly what that other type of public health insurance is. You'll see that throughout a few assessment sections within the workflow. Let's click Save in the bottom right corner. This brings us to the screen titled Barriers. As a reminder, barriers is not a HMIS term. Barriers is a term used in ClientTrack to refer to disabilities. If the client has had a change in the barriers recorded from the last assessment, please make those changes here. If the client has not had any changes in their barriers, simply click Save and Close. The majority of users will come to a domestic violence question. This is where you will record if the client has experienced domestic violence. If so, please select yes. Once you've selected yes, you're prompted to record when was the last experience of domestic violence and if the client is currently fleeing, yes or no. Keep in mind that domestic violence is not limited to someone that the person was in a romantic relationship with. This can also include family violence. This question is usually only asked of individuals in the enrollment that are 18 or older. Let's click Save in the bottom right corner. This will bring you to the assessment screen titled Income and Sources from Non-Cash Benefits. Let's scroll down. The only two questions on this screen required is income from any source and non-cash benefits from any source. Let's record yes to each question so that we can demonstrate how to record these answers. For income, you should ask your client if they had any income in the past 30 days. Because I've said yes, my client has income, I must select each type of income that my client receives by placing a check mark to the left of that type of income. Description is not necessary. However, you are required to record an amount greater than 0 for the monthly amount. The system will automatically calculate the total for all income sources, and this is the amount that will pull to the reports. Notice other income is an option at the very bottom. If other income is selected, then a description will be required. What is the other income exactly, and what is the amount? Let's scroll down to non-cash benefits. Because we've said yes at the top that our client does have non-cash benefits, we have to record and by placing a check mark to the left of each type of non-cash benefit that the client is receiving. A description is not required and a monthly amount is not required. Keep in mind, HUD does not want to know how much in food stamps the client is receiving, so a monthly amount is not required. You're more than welcome to record that amount, but it is not required. And it is not something that would pull to an APR or a CAPR. Also, if your client received any other sources of non-cash benefits and you select other source, description is required. Let's click Save and Close in the bottom right corner. And we've seen this screen before, type of assessment. Bring your attention to the progress bar. I've just recorded assessment questions for my head of household March test. These set of questions will be directed toward my family member. Remember, we are recording a during program enrollment, which is an update assessment for our family, so I wouldn't want to select annual assessment. Go ahead and click on during program enrollment. And all I have to do is scroll down. Now, I would like to show you a way to help speed up your data entry. Let's pretend for this example, my head of household was the person that had a change in their situation, which prompted me to record a update assessment. My family member hasn't had any changes, but the workflow takes me through every person that is in the family anytime that I record an assessment. If my family member has not had a change in their situation, All you have to do is click Default Last Insurance Status, and what we recorded at entry will populate for us. Let's click Save in the bottom right corner. Next, this comes to barriers. If the family member has had a change in barriers, simply make those changes. This is what was recorded at entry, and we'll pretend that my family member has not had a change in barriers. Click Save and Close. And notice I did not have a question pertaining to non-cash benefits or income for my family member because my family member is under the age of 18. I just wanted to point that out, that those questions are only required for individuals over the age of 18. We now have a message that says you're done. This means that you've completed your workflow from beginning to end, and all you have to do is click Finish. And this will conclude the video for Update and Annual Assessments.